Before we get into this theory, let's quickly talk about what we're actually discussing. A fascinating idea that's been circulating among fans suggests that escaping from Fromville might be much simpler than everyone has assumed. Instead of invisible walls or some mysterious force preventing people from leaving, some viewers believe the town itself functions like a maze, constantly changing and guiding people back to where they started. According to this theory, the faraway trees may be the mechanism that keeps that maze alive. But if that's true, then destroying those trees could potentially free everyone. The problem is that Season 3 hinted that the trees are connected to the sacrificed children. So what if destroying the maze also means destroying the children forever? If that interpretation is correct, then the greatest obstacle standing in everyone's way may not actually be the monsters or even the man in yellow. It may be the very children everyone is trying so desperately to save. Imagine if the answer to one of the biggest mysteries in From turned out to be almost embarrassingly simple. Not some secret underground chamber, not some hidden clue buried inside Victor's drawings, but simply destroying the maze itself. At first, that sounds almost ridiculous. After all, this series has spent years building layer after layer of mysteries. Most fans naturally assume that the explanation has to be incredibly complicated. But one Reddit theory proposes something much more disturbing. Maybe the residents of Fromville aren't trapped inside a supernatural prison at all. Maybe they're lost inside a maze. And strangely enough, when you start looking at the evidence, that idea becomes harder to dismiss than you might expect. For years, viewers have operated under the assumption that something is physically preventing people from leaving. It feels like the most obvious explanation. People drive away only to return to the same place. They walk through the woods and somehow never escape. Naturally, we picture invisible walls surrounding the town. But here's something interesting. Has the show ever actually shown someone hitting a wall? Not really. Nobody crashes into an invisible barrier. Nobody reaches the edge of the world. Instead, people simply find themselves back where they started. Roads loop endlessly. The forest seems to stretch forever. Locations appear to change over time. It's almost as if reality itself bends and rearranges. And that's what makes this theory so interesting, because prisons and mazes are two very different things. A prison keeps people inside. A maze keeps people lost. Those are not the same thing. And according to some fans, the walls of that maze may not be walls at all. They may be the faraway trees. Ever since they first appeared, the faraway trees have been among the strangest elements in the entire series. Characters enter them and emerge somewhere completely unexpected. Sometimes they help, sometimes they don't. Their behavior has always seemed unpredictable. But Season 3 added another layer to the mystery. The show strongly suggested that these trees are somehow connected to the sacrificed children and the hope they held onto during their final moments. Exactly how that connection works remains unclear, but many viewers came away believing that the children left something behind within the roots. And that's where this theory takes a darker turn. What if the trees aren't simply portals? What if they're actively maintaining the maze itself? What if the shifting geography, the looping roads, and the strange behavior of the town are all connected to the trees? In other words, perhaps the faraway trees aren't merely transportation devices. Perhaps they're the system. If that's true, then the next question becomes obvious. What happens if the trees are destroyed? Some fans believe that doing so could potentially collapse the entire maze and finally allow everyone to leave. But there may be a terrible price attached to that solution, because according to this interpretation, the trees may represent much more than pieces of supernatural machinery. They may represent the children themselves. Not physically, of course, but perhaps emotionally, spiritually, or through memory. Season 3 suggested that hope played an enormous role in creating whatever exists inside Fromville. If the children's hope became embedded within the roots, then removing those roots could potentially erase whatever remains of them. And that possibility changes everything, because suddenly destroying the trees no longer feels like defeating an enemy. It feels like sacrificing innocent souls. Some fans have even revisited one of Victor's encounters with the boy in white. There was a moment where the boy in white prevented Victor from using an axe. At the time, many viewers assumed that he was simply protecting Victor from making a mistake or interfering with something important. But some people have started wondering if there might be another reason. What if the boy in white wasn't protecting a clue? What if he was protecting the children? Of course, the show has never confirmed this interpretation. It's simply one possibility. But it's interesting to think about, especially because the boy in white has consistently behaved as though he's trying to help rather than harm. And perhaps that's where another fascinating question emerges. If the children are connected to the maze, does that mean they're responsible for trapping everyone? Some viewers think the answer could be yes, but not intentionally. That's an important distinction. The theory doesn't suggest that the children are villains. In fact, it suggests something much more tragic. Imagine dying in fear. Imagine desperately wanting to survive. Imagine refusing to disappear. Perhaps their hope became so powerful that it accidentally created something much larger than they intended. Not a prison, not a curse, but a mechanism designed to preserve them. And in doing so, that mechanism may have trapped everyone else. If that's true, then the children themselves are victims rather than antagonists. They didn't choose to imprison anyone. Their desperate desire to hold on may have simply had unintended consequences. Ironically, that would make them one of the saddest parts of the entire story. Naturally, many fans have raised objections. The first is obvious. Even if destroying the trees would work, how would anyone actually do it? There could be dozens of faraway trees spread throughout the forest. Some of them might not even have been discovered yet. However, other viewers have pointed toward Miranda's map and Victor's drawings. According to one interpretation, there may only be 6 major faraway trees connected to the bottle tree. If that's true, then destroying them becomes difficult but not impossible. Still, that raises another problem. Would destroying the trees even accomplish anything? After all, Fromville doesn't seem to obey normal rules. The town changes, the geography shifts, new threats appear. Reality itself appears to adapt. Because of that, many fans believe the maze may possess some kind of self-repair mechanism. In other words, perhaps destroying the trees wouldn't matter. Perhaps the town would simply create new ones. If that's the case, then the trees may not be the source of the curse at all. They might only be symptoms. And unless the true source is dealt with, the cycle could continue indefinitely. Another major objection concerns the children themselves. After all, the children seem to want help. They call out to Tabitha, they ask to be saved. So why would they trap people? Supporters of this theory argue that the answer is simple. They aren't doing it consciously. The children may not even realize what they're doing. Whatever mechanism keeps Fromville functioning could have been created accidentally by their dying hope rather than through any deliberate action. That explanation feels much more consistent with the emotional themes of the series, because From has never really been about good versus evil. It's about grief, it's about trauma, it's about guilt and impossible choices. That brings us to another intriguing possibility involving the boy in white. Perhaps he represents the opposite side of the conflict. If the children are desperately holding on, maybe the boy in white represents the part of them that wants peace, the part that wants release, the part that understands that clinging to existence forever only prolongs suffering. And then there's the man in yellow. His motives remain one of the greatest mysteries in the entire series. Some fans believe he represents another path entirely. Others believe he wants to complete whatever cycle began long ago. But the truth is that we still know very little about him, which means it's far too early to call him the ultimate villain. In fact, one of the biggest themes in From may be that nobody is entirely good or entirely evil. Everyone is trapped inside a cycle they barely understand. Even Victor's famous statement that pictures remember has taken on new meaning for some viewers. Many fans have started wondering whether memory itself plays a much larger role in Fromville than we've realized. Victor preserves memories through drawings. Generations continue repeating similar patterns. The children continue calling out across time. Nothing seems to disappear completely. Perhaps memory itself is one of the foundations upon which this strange world was built. And if that's true, then destroying the trees may not simply erase the children. It could erase their history as well. It would be as though they never existed. That's an absolutely heartbreaking possibility, because suddenly the question changes. This isn't just about escaping, it's about morality. Should the people of Fromville sacrifice innocent souls in order to save themselves? Or should they continue searching for another solution? That kind of impossible choice feels perfectly suited for the series, because From has always been about cycles. It's always been about grief. It's always been about ordinary people being forced to make unbearable decisions. And perhaps that's why this theory has captured the imagination of so many fans. Not because it provides definite answers, but because it challenges our assumptions. Most viewers naturally blame the monsters, others focus on the man in yellow. But what if the truth is far more tragic? What if the greatest obstacle isn't evil at all? What if it's simply children who are afraid to let go? In the end, that's what makes this theory so fascinating. It presents an answer that is both simple and devastating. Destroy the maze, escape the town, go home, but perhaps lose the very souls everyone has spent years trying to save.